As do I. I find myself betting on the brat all the time. He makes you inspire confidence in him, and you have no idea how much I hate the words coming out of my mouth. I hoped to keep this position long enough until he was mature enough to take this hate from me. Now, I've got no one waiting on it for me. Well, except for maybe that Sarutobi brat, Konohamaru. But, I can't bet on Naruto versus the entire population of Konoha, my grandfather's village. I hope it doesn't get to that point. I really do. However, in addition to that I need you to investigate the council, she said. At this, Jiraiya glared at her. Why? Tsunade sighed and rubbed the back of her head. Kushina told me that the Jishinists knew about our plan. It's why the target Kakashi put under a genjutsu just died. Someone in our circle is a traitor, she said. What? Jiraiya whispered while Tsunade nodded. I hate to say it, Jiraiya, but Naruto's got a spy network that easily outclasses yours. They can go anywhere without being seen by the eyes of the living. I'm almost tempted to reverse his banishment just because of that fact. The information he could provide to the village is invaluable, however you know the village more than anyone else, even me. If anyone can find a traitor among us, it's you, she said. Jiraiya rolled his shoulders and sighed. One by one, the powers of the world seemed to be moving in strange directions which no one could ascertain. Naruto, the Biju, the Akatsuki, the Jishinists, and even the gods themselves. Honestly, Jiraiya wondered if the world at large would even be the same once all of these forces finished colliding. Yet, at the center of all of them was his former student. Naruto. Chapter 66. Quote, Death is something inevitable. When a man has done what he considers to be his duty to his people and his country, he can rest in peace. Nelson Mandela. The Hinokan team sat around another table beneath the Uzumaki compound. 4 of the 6 of them sat in stunned silence. There's a traitor in the cabinet? Makoto asked. Kushina slowly nodded. Yes, it's the reason why our Kakashi's puppet didn't work. He wasn't killed randomly. They knew that he'd been captured and that we'd interrogated him. By Naruto's own words, they're operating somewhere in Otogakure. The doctor who was close to attacking Haruno Sakura was killed by the assumed head of the cult, she said as the other 4 looked at each other. He's a definite old guy. I didn't think it was possible for there to be someone older than Gigi, but there's a lot of things I'm learning today, Naruto said while Kakashi leaned back and stared at the ceiling. The Jonin sighed. I see. I had thought of that possibility, but it seemed so small that I hoped to not entertain it. I can see why you kept it to yourselves until now. There's enough mistrust being gripped around the neck of the village. It wouldn't be good if the cabinet starts doubting itself as well. I assume you told Tsunade-sama? He asked. Kushina glanced at her former husband's student. I'm still a part of the shinobi corps, Kakashi. I'll try to keep my personal feelings out of my duty. She's aware of my news as well. I've no doubt that she's going to tell Jiraiya. That means we'll have to be even more careful than we thought, she returned. He immediately agreed. Yugao tapped on the table with her finger. Well, it's troubling either way. This rules out all 6 of us, Jiraiya-sama, and Tsunade-sama. Everyone else is still a very important figure in our village. Inoichi is the one who heads the department for assessing the psychological state of our shinobi forces. If he's compromised, then there's a massive hole in Konoha's strengths that could work to the advantage of our enemies. If it's the council members, then they've had an exact voice in the ear of the Hokage in how to run the village. Shikaku-san, Ibiki-san, the head Anbu, every last position is one with devastating consequences, she said as she massaged the side of her head. Sasuke stared at the rest of his team before he turned to Kushina. We need to find a way to get into the land of Odo. If we could find the cult and slip into their ranks, then we could destroy them from the inside. If they're worried about their inner workings, then it'd dismantle the cell in Konoha, he said. Kushina sat back in her chair and placed her elbows on the table. Which is why I have no doubts that Tsunade's discussing sending the 5 of you into Odo as we speak on a secret mission. Since we can't have the cabinet knowing about it, it'll more than likely be an unsanctioned mission. You'll be assumed to be moving on your own without her consent. Above all, you guys can't get caught. It'll be hard to rescue you if you are. Naruto and I can't go since we'll have to stay and capture more of the Jishinists still in the village. If that mission does come to pass, Kakashi will be in charge. Sasuke, Yugao, and Makoto glanced at the one-eyed Jonin. The smile on his face was reflected in his eyes before Naruto called for their attention. I'll set up some long-range communication between us and you guys with my summons. They'll try to warn you guys of any danger once you enter Otogakure. They're already mapping out the rest of the Jushinist cult grounds. You won't be going in totally blind, Naruto said, hoping to comfort them with that knowledge. Of course, that information had its intended effect. The others eased and Makoto cleared her throat. So then what's our timetable? Clearly we don't have half a year, since that was what Shikaku-san was worried about. While I'm glad there is great faith in our skills, I don't think we can take these people down in as little as a week or two. Which is why we'll just have to wait for Tsunade to make that decision. In the meantime, you all should go back and prepare for a mission of at least a month. Also, I want all of you to find out about a plan called the Great Slaughter. He also said, the summoner of the Shinigami wouldn't be able to stop them, Kushina said, sending a shiver through the rest of the group while Naruto narrowed his eyes. The Great Slaughter. It's not a comforting name, Yugao murmured while the others remained quiet for a moment. Well, we can guess a bit from the name itself. Whatever it is, they certainly plan on a massive massacre. Whether that's simply of Konoha itself or the world at large is unknown, Makoto said. She then noticed Sasuke staring off to the side. Sasuke? She asked, getting his attention. Everyone turned to him and noticed the thoughtful expression on his face. I'm just thinking that we might have to invest further into the loser's training of that Death Sage mode that he's been learning. Think about it. It was because of the gods that the Jushinists attacked the Uzumaki clan. That's why we're even aware of their existence in our village in the first place. Whatever's happening, they're challenging Naruto's authority, or at least the Shinigami's. If they bring out more like Hidan, who only Naruto and maybe Kushina could kill, then there might be a great slaughter as no one will be able to stop them, he answered. Naruto narrowed his eyes and Kakashi nodded. Yes, Konoha's survival seems to be dependent on Naruto. However, we still don't know what's wrong with him that's drawing all these evil spirits to him. If we're not careful, one of them could take over his body, and who's to say it's not a Jushinist? You also heard the Shinigami. There are many beings out there aside from our world. Beings more powerful than we can even begin to imagine, both good and evil. We're stuck between two very difficult positions. Kushina patted her son's shoulder. Then we'll make sure we're not crushed between the two of them. Now, we're dismissed. We've been gone for long enough. Continue to go about your business, but do it carefully. Remember, they know that we're aware of them now. Who knows what they'll try to do, she said. The rest of the group agreed and they swiftly, yet discreetly left the Uzumaki compound. Kushina kissed her son and quickly summoned Shiraku. The blonde held his head down before he walked off with the former Fire Temple monk. For the next few hours, there came more lessons and teachings. Each of them seemed more profound than the last. Of course, they all confused the hell out of Naruto, but he certainly felt more relaxed than he had usually. Of course, throughout the whole time, Yahiko kept himself connected to Naruto. The two quickly crafted a rather friendly bond, especially since they were students of Jiraiya. Of course, there was a bit of iffiness when Yahiko said that he, Konan, and Nagato were the ones who created the Akatsuki. However, the blonde felt much of his initial anger dissipate when Yahiko spoke that he wanted to follow in Jiraiya's ideals of peace. Their home country of Omegakure had been ravaged by war from the 5 great nations. Nevertheless, their fame grew too high. Yahiko sacrificed himself for Konan and Nagato by killing himself. Unfortunately, what Akatsuki turned into was not what he'd envisioned at all. As Naruto listened, and the two men melded their spirits together, he found himself unable to judge anything. Once again, the ravages of war and strife plague those around the world with its cruel sting, organizing the destiny fixed between people. The Uzumaki patriarch said nothing as he and Yahiko continued their merger, set on righting the wrongs that so many men seemed to make to any end for their own greed. Pretty soon, Yahiko detached himself from Naruto and Kimimaro took his place. Greetings, Naruto-sama, Kimimaro said. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki greeted his former enemy from 2 years ago. The two inhaled and then exhaled as they felt their thoughts and actions become as one. Once that was done, Kimimaro wasted no time transferring all the information he'd acquired from looking through the underground chambers of the Jushinist cult. Naruto felt a deep rage threatening to burst from within him when he saw what consisted of entertainment throughout the cult. Nothing about the men and women within the walls was human. The screams of 1,000 spirits agonizing for vengeance and deliverance were heard. Naruto could only promise that their wrongs would be made right. It got to such a point that he asked for Kimimaro to stop with the transfer lest he be overwhelmed by all of it. "Don't worry. They won't get away with this," the blonde said with a scowl on his face before he slowly stood to his feet. Well, at least he'd be able to make a map of the interior for the others who'd be going over there. With this happening, Naruto couldn't continue his lesson with Chiriku. His spirit and his sense of balance had been thoroughly disrupted by a lot of what he'd seen. Naturally, the former fire monk understood, leaving Naruto with a few thought-provoking questions. Of course, the blonde did his diligence and thought on them as he walked back to the compound. The walk was a little awkward with Kimimaro. Naruto had only fought the man briefly and he was an ally of Orochimaru at the time. It certainly didn't inspire the best connection. However, the two tried to find some type of common ground. That common ground was met when Kimimaro spoke of how his clan had been slaughtered, which left him alone. Now that was certainly something Naruto identified with, being the assumed last of a once great clan. However, he asked the bone user if it was possible for some of the Kagaya clan members to have escaped. Unfortunately, Kimimaro couldn't answer that question. "If they are alive, I'm not sure where they are, Naruto-sama," he said. To be honest, Kimimaro wasn't even sure if he cared in the end. The Kagaya clan wasn't the same as the Uzumaki clan, having such strong family bonds. In fact, Kimimaro would be rather happy to never see his clan members, as his days in that cage remained a vivid memory within him. Besides, it wasn't like they were slaughtered for no reason like the Uzumaki clan. They'd been destroyed by Kurigakure due to their own violence, bloodlust, and battle-hardened spirits. Maybe the world was better off without them. "You remind me a lot of Sasuke," Naruto commented offhandedly, which got a chuckle from Wolf. Kimimaro didn't reply and the two settled into silence until Naruto stepped back into his home. Surprisingly, his mother was in the living room. He saw her with a list in her hand and upon closer inspection he noticed that she was creating her list of people she wanted at the wedding. Still, he wondered how many would attend a mother-son wedding. It sure as hell wasn't very orthodox. The blonde touched her shoulder and she saw the seriousness of his gaze. She sighed and put down her list. "What happened?" she asked, knowing that her son was currently linked with one of his spirits. There was a hint of silver behind his normally blue eyes. "Kimimaro came back and gave me his knowledge of the base. Unfortunately, it's not all of it. I was starting to get overwhelmed by just how bloodthirsty these people are. Still, he and the others gave extensive knowledge of the inner workings of it. I'm sure Kakashi-sensei, Yugao Nichan, Makoto-san, and Sasuke can sneak in and help dismantle them while you and I look for the traitor in the village," he said. Kushina stood up and nodded. "Alright, then we'll work on that day for them. You feed me the information and I'll make the map. How we get this to them, I don't know, but I'll think of something," she said. Naruto agreed and the two walked up the stairs to continue their work. Tsunade grumbled as she continued to sign off on some documents, unsure of what to even do. So there was a traitor in the cabinet and she had no idea who it was outside the obvious. Could there even be more than one traitor? She felt a little stuck on what to do, especially when she was just sent back a report on the death of the victim from earlier. No one had been able to pinpoint any suspects at the moment, though an Inuzuka spoke of a very familiar scent. How the hell was Tsunade supposed to even say that she knew who the target was and that they'd already been captured? Talk about having your cake and not eating it. Plus, Ibiki and Inoichi had come back with a complete interrogation on the two Jashinists. Once again, these were small fry. So supposedly their only objective was to receive reports from those higher in the cult. Each of them was assigned a target to kill during a certain time of the month. Of course, they had to keep them alive, but now Tsunade wasn't sure who to trust outside of Jiraiya and the Hinokan team. Jiraiya was Jiraiya. Naruto, well, Tsunade wasn't even sure what to think since he'd provided the information about this traitor to Kushina. However, with Jiraiya's little prophecy still on the horizon, the Godime really wondered if Naruto wasn't somehow involved in all of this. However, despite what she'd done to him, she could never see him turning into a traitor. If he did, it would have been much earlier in his life when the village gave him a reason to. Makoto and Kushina were long dead. Kakashi, despite being a bit of a fragile profile in terms of monthly therapy for all shinobi, was about as loyal as they came. If there was anyone to be a flight risk, it'd be Uchiha Sasuke. That boy's profile was amongst the most damaged that she'd ever surveyed, especially after the Uchiha massacre. She never thought he might have suicidal tendencies, but that definitely wasn't something that most sane people could overcome. Of course, he had no reason to join the Jushinists, especially since Naruto had eased the blow by reviving Makoto and Yuna. It wasn't impossible for it to be Shikaku or Inoichi, but Tsunade found that highly unlikely. She'd been just a preteen when those two brats were born. Troublemakers they could be in their youth, they weren't the type to have the proper distinction for Jushinists. Plus, it wouldn't make sense for the cult member, Hidan, to kill the sensei of their children's team. Unless there was something she was missing, she doubted that was a part of any plan. She was ashamed to say it was possible for it to be Ibiki. He also had a history of troubles and his work was very violent in nature, even by shinobi standards. Then there were the council members, Kaharu and Homura. She always assumed that they had Konoha's best interests at heart, but their ability to disagree with every peaceful solution her predecessor, Hiruzen, made for better relations certainly could have been Jushinist influence. She didn't want to admit it, but it also could have been the case when they wanted to have Naruto detained permanently. Never mind Kaharu's apparent dislike of him, but even Homura never seemed favorable to him either. Then lastly, there was the head Anbu. The implications of what that might mean worried Tsunade even more than the two council members. What a mess, but even if they are aware of us, we have to make our move while they're still split apart by Oto and Konoha. I can only send the Hinoken team. They're the only ones who'd know what to expect. If I send anyone else, there's no way they'll go unnoticed. The only problem is what should I say to deceive the traitor in the cabinet? It'll be strange if most of the team is gone. However, Tsunade thought to herself. The Hokage sighed and pushed herself back from her desk. Not a moment of time to herself and she'd be having to face the village with a smile on her face as she made public appearances, speeches, and other sorts of stuff to keep the illusion of peace in the village. She also wanted to see how Shizune was doing. Then, she hoped that they wrapped this up quickly. Teams were already being sent out to Iwagakure for the Chunin exams. She'd spent a long time signing off on teams to leave. She even signed off on Yuri, Konohamaru, and Moegi. She also signed off Yukimaru, Hanabi, and their Inuzuka teammate. Both teams along with others would be going to Iwagakure. The Godime leaned back in her chair before she heard a knock on her door. Enter, she said. She quickly noticed Team Guy come through the door. Greetings, Lady Hokage. We have returned from our assignment. Guy said with an exuberant grin on his face. Neji and Tenten shook their heads while Lee offered the same enthusiasm. Tsunade clenched her fingers and placed her elbows on her desk. Right, and what do you have for me? She asked. Information on the whereabouts of Shimura Danzo as you instructed. We've located a few hideouts and there have been a few assaults from previous route agents. We also found a rather interesting discovery. We ran into Yura Uzumaki and a few of her team members since she left the Konoha Shinobi Corps. It seems that they are pursuing the same thing. We coordinated our efforts with her group for a little while, Guy said while Tsunade raised an eyebrow. Ah yes, how could she forget the outburst that Yura made in her office a few days ago? What would she be investigating Danzo for? No, wait. This could actually be a good thing. Yes, actually. I see. And who is a part of this team that she's put together? She asked, genuinely curious. Not anyone we've seen before. In fact, it's quite the variety of characters. Jugo, Karen, Suigetsu, Kotoheim, and Konan, Tenten said, which made Tsunade frown for a moment. She'd heard the last name in that group before somewhere. However, she didn't exactly remember where. I see. Did Yura say what she planned to do with Danzo should she find him? The Godime asked next. As much as this group seemed competent, especially given that 3 of them used to be a part of Uchiha Sasuke's old team, she knew just how slippery that old warhawk could be. She also knew how powerful he could be as well. There was a reason he'd survived for so long. She didn't say. She didn't seem too happy to see us, well aside from Neji I guess. Since our interests aligned we just decided to not push it. When we entered the Land of Stone, Neji found a few route agents tailing us. Yura and her team dispatched them quickly. It didn't take them long to kill themselves when they were caught, but Yura-san continued on anyway, Tenten continued. Tsunade hummed, tapping her finger on the table before Lee handed her a scroll. All the information is present here, Tsunade-sama, he said with the same exuberance. The blonde took the scroll and placed it away. Very well, but I want you all on standby. I might be sending you back out to continue the assignment. If Danzo is there, then it might be a good chance to capture him. In fact, I might be sending you with another team. Either way, thank you. You've earned a good rest, she said. Nonsense, Hokage-sama. Our youthful endeavors would only be more training to endure the hardships for Konoha. Yash, Team Guy, let's head to the training ground and prepare ourselves for another youthful mission. Guy exclaimed. Tenten and Neji groaned while Lee shouted as well. Tsunade rolled her eyes as she watched them leave. Fucking idiots, she thought to herself before she bit on her thumb and summoned a small slime body of Katsuyu. Katsuyu, take this message to Makoto. Make sure you aren't seen by anyone in the village. You're the only one I can count on right now, Tsunade said. Very well, Tsunade. I also hope you're properly getting sleep. You seem very tired, the small slug said before she took the scroll into her body and disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Tsunade leaned back in her chair and sighed. Well, it's hard to sleep when you don't know if you'll wake up the next day, she thought to herself before she closed her eyes for a few minutes. Maybe a little nap before all the chaos was appropriate. I see. So that's what's been going on, Yuna said as she sat in the deepest parts of the Uchiha compound. She leaned against Sasuke as they stared at the wall. Sasuke nodded as he wrapped his arm around her shoulder. Yeah, it's more likely we'll be sent out on a mission very soon to try and take them down. I might not be in the village for a little while, he said as Yuna chuckled. She then jabbed him in his side. Then try not to miss me too much. But do your best out there. Let me tell you that dying isn't as great as some make it out to be, she said with a small smile on her face while Sasuke remained silent for a second. He quickly turned her head to him and he kissed her fervently. She widened her eyes and sighed when he brushed his hands through her long, black hair. When they separated, Sasuke stared into her eyes. I've seen my clan die once before. I won't let you die again. When this is over, I want you to marry me, he said as she widened her eyes. Yuna looked at him in shock, but he only stared at her with strong eyes that she could only find attractive. She opened her mouth and then closed it, unsure of what to even say. Sasuke, she said before he nodded. I've dragged my feet long enough. Once I'm done with this mission, I want you in my life, and I want to rebuild my clan with you, he said as she turned away from him and chuckled. She then shook her head. You suck at proposals. You could at least have been a bit more romantic about it, she said before she pinched the bridge of her nose. Well, I don't know any other woman who'd put up with you aside from me. However, in order to make sure you succeed, I won't give my answer until you finish your mission. Though, I'll give you some advice. Be sure there's a ring involved. I'll punch you otherwise, she said and Sasuke nodded. I'll do that, he replied as she leaned on his shoulder. Good. The two stayed like this for a little while longer. Yuna, why don't you ask Naruto to bring back your brother? I'm sure you miss Shisui as well, he said as they continued to look at the wall. Yuna's lips curved upwards and she shook her head. Yeah, my stupid little brother. I have thought about it, but I know Shisui. He was always burdened by his eyes. I just never knew how much given that Danzo would make him plan with Itachi for him to suicide. Clearly, I've failed as his older sister to protect him, even though he was way more powerful than me. He was an Anbu and I was simply a Chunin. Still, I believe Obito would be satisfied with how he lived his life. Though, I'm not sure it's wise to burden Naruto-sama with more summonings and revivals given his current problem, she said. Her lover grunted. I suppose, he replied as Yuna pushed up her coat. It had been falling down the side of her shoulders. I believe I've seen that many of the people Naruto-sama's revived are those who still had things left unfinished in this world. Me, his mother, your mother, and so many more of us. In addition, there are those who need them around, to fill the hole left by their disappearance. Yet, there are those of us who have old wounds reopened when we see those we've lost. But, I for one, am happy with my life, a life I wouldn't have had if Naruto-sama had revived me. Sasuke held her close and agreed. Yeah, the Dobi's good at making people want to surround him. Even people like me. I want you to be careful when we're out of the village. They can be anywhere and some of them are very powerful, he said while she punched his shoulder. I'm not weak, Sasuke. I'm still a kunoichi, but I promise I'll be careful. I suppose it wouldn't do well for me to lose my second life, she said, and he wholeheartedly agreed before the both of them heard a knock on the door. As typical Uchiha, the two pulled away from each other just in time for the door to open. Makoto popped her head in and sighed. You know, there's no point in trying to act like you weren't doing what I think you're doing when I know you're both dating. Anyway, I suggest you both do what you have to before we head out. We'll also need to give Sakura the keys to the compound. She'll also have to make sure she's not followed, Makoto said while Yuna exhaled. I'll keep an eye on Sakura. I could even invite some of her friends over here for a few days. It'd give the compound some eyes and ears, she answered, and Makoto quickly agreed. She then smiled and left the two alone. Seeing this, Sasuke and Yuna glanced at each other. The latter quickly grabbed the former by his collar. I've got some time before my next shift and you don't know when you're leaving. I can think of a way to pass the time, she said with a grin on her face while Sasuke closed his eyes and submitted to the whims of his lover. Meanwhile, Makoto stood outside the door and closed her eyes. She leaned up, walking away until she made it back to the main floors of the compound. She slowly sat down on a chair and placed her head in her hands. I must be crazy, she thought to herself before she got up and walked back to her room. Kushina had long since left the Uzumaki clan compound. She was currently wearing some civilian clothes so that she might not draw attention to herself. Nevertheless, her eyes continued to move through the crowds of people, hoping to find one person or two who slipped up. While she wouldn't be able to do anything about them now, she'd at least be able to remember their faces. That'd make it even easier to grab others for later. In any case, she was on her way to the Uchiha compound to deliver the map to Makoto before they left. Any advantage they could get before the four of them entered Odo would be good to have. In time, she arrived at the compound. Every step she felt the Honsho within her growing stronger from her son's extended practice. She wished she could be there with him to practice more with it. Admittedly, she'd also been neglecting her training as well. Once she rejoined with the Hyuga clan and finished the meeting, then she'd return and do her own training. Her son would also have to start working some of the more political aspects of their clan, even in spite of what was happening in the village. Kushina walked up through the almost deserted compound, feeling rather melancholy. So many souls, innocent and guilty, had their blood drunk up by the dust and dirt of the ground. All of that had been due to protecting the village. It was almost the same for her own clan. Destroyed because it had either grown too powerful or too arrogant. Who could tell anymore? The fiancé of Uzumaki Naruto found the main building and knocked on the door. After a few minutes of waiting, the door was opened by Makoto. Kushina, what are you doing here? Makoto asked while the matriarch of the Uzumaki clan held up a basket of the Uchiha clan's favored desserts. I bear an offering for my friends, Databane. Never know when you might need something to make you happy, she said with a wide smile on her face. Makoto returned the smile and agreed, opening the door to let her friend inside. Instead of the kitchen, the two walked up the stairs until they made it to Makoto's room. Kushina stared at the numerous weapons and scrolls on the bed. She almost wondered if Makoto was going to war rather than infiltrating a cult. You're certainly taking a lot, she said while Makoto closed the blinds. She then held up the dessert basket and found a piece of paper hidden beneath it. She grabbed it and pulled it off. Once she opened it, she saw the map that Kushina made with Naruto. Better to take along than not take enough. Besides, we're dealing with over 1,000 members and there's only 4 of us. All things considered, we might actually be facing an army if we somehow get caught. Also, what is this? Makoto asked. Obviously, it was some kind of map, but she couldn't tell of what. Hell, she'd never seen one so organized. It's a map of the cult hideout. Naruto's summons have been hard at work relaying all the information back to him. Apparently, some of the things they do are so horrific that even he can't look at them. I really don't want to know what they do either. All I know is that you guys better be careful. For all we know, they could be expecting us. Makoto looked back at the map and furled it up. Got it. We'll make sure to keep our wits about us. Besides, I think this will be a good experience for Sasuke as well. Though I have no doubt we'll all be going to have some mandatory therapy sessions in order to return back to active duty, Makoto said as she sat on her bed. Kushina laughed and sat on the bed as well. And where is Sasuke anyway? Shouldn't he be packing as well? The redhead asked while her friend blushed. She looked away. Yeah, he's packing in his room. He's doing a lot of packing, Makoto said as Kushina stared at her friend weirdly. However, she quickly noticed the look on her best friend's face and gained a mischievous look. Mikoto, what aren't you telling me? Kushina asked as the woman turned to her, confused. Kushina quickly wrapped her arm around her shoulder and grinned. You're hiding something from me. I know you. What's going on? She asked before Makoto rolled her eyes. The Uchiha matriarch nearly wanted to groan. This was definitely not what she needed right now. Sometimes Kushina was too perceptive and nosy for her own good. Nothing's going on, Makoto exclaimed. We've played this game before, Makoto. I press you. You fight back. I wear you down. You tell me. It's an endless cycle, Databane. So why don't we just skip the war and go straight to the treaty? You have that look in your eye the first time you saw Fugaku. Who's the lucky guy that's occupied your thoughts? She replied before Makoto groaned again. I feel like we've vastly shifted subjects here. Good. We could use something lighthearted during a stressful time like this. The only thing I could use is you getting out of my room and leaving me to mentally prepare for my mission. You can see yourself out, Makoto said as she picked up Kushina and pushed her out, much to the amusement of the redhead. I'll get it out of you eventually. Kushina hollered as Makoto slammed her door closed. The Uchiha matriarch shook her head as she slid down to the ground. This was definitely not how she was planned on bringing this out. More than that, what was she bringing out at all? There should be nothing. Yeah, nothing. Meanwhile, Kushina decided to leave her best friend alone. Makoto had always been one who kept her secrets close to her chest. Trying to get one out of her was like trying to pull out fucking teeth. Still, Kushina had been one of the few with a decent track record on the attempt. Even she could practice patience when it was convenient. Something told her she was on the verge of something grand. She wasn't gonna let this go so easily. The redhead walked down the room. She then left from the clan's main compound and proceeded to exit the Uchiha clan grounds. Still, what's got her so bent out of shape? Kushina thought to herself. While she entertained herself with the question, Kushina walked through Konoha. She still kept a firm eye over those passing through the village. If nothing else, she had to hand it to the Jishinists. She had no idea how a cult of psychotic murderers could keep such neutral expressions that not even seasoned shinobi could point them out. Nevertheless, she finally made it to her target. She stood before the Hyuga clan and exhaled slowly. The conversation from last time had been rather promising until she had to cut it short. She was quickly seen by the guards. Kushina-san, good afternoon. This is perfect timing as Hiyashi-sama wanted to send out someone to ask for your time. I'll inform him that you've come, a member said. Kushina nodded with a bright smile of her own. She waved him away and she only had to wait about 5 minutes before she was led back to Hiyashi and Hanako. In no time, she found herself standing in front of the heads of the Hyuga clan. It seems we have impeccable timing. I understand that our meeting got interrupted. Thank you for meeting with me so quickly, she said. Hiyashi nodded. By your tone, it wasn't a casual matter. Has it been resolved? He asked. Keeping her face neutral, she answered him. Well, yes and no. It's been taken care of for the moment, she said. Hiyashi and Hanako took note of her words, nodding in affirmation. It was clearly something that couldn't be discussed in the open like this. Both understood the necessity of silence and discretion. I see. Well, I pray these matters of yours come to a close soon. Anyway, Hanako, the elders, and I have discussed the matter and your proposal extensively. Hanako has also discovered that there are a few Hyuga that are indeed interested in potential life in Kumo. It would seem that time is indeed a healer of wounds as many have slowly forgotten the event from 13 years ago, he said as he thought of his brother, Hazashi, who was currently out of the village on a separate assignment. Kushina remained hopeful as Hiyashi cleared his throat. We are willing to agree to your proposal provided we are allowed to judge the marriage partner should be a condition in order for Naruto to find out this mysterious problem of his. We also ask for a share in the shares of the Uzumaki clan household, he said. Kushina scratched her chin and sighed. I don't think my son would disagree with that, so I'll speak for him this once and accept the deal. We can agree to that. We'll also put a priority on all Hyuga clan members in terms of sales, and discounts from all stores affiliated with the Uzumaki clan. I'll even provide Hanabi with some classes in Uzumaki Fuinjutsu, she said. Naturally, all of these benefits made Hiyashi and Hanako pleased. My, that's very kind of you, Kushina. Well, it would be rude for us to decline, especially since this is a matter that could aid Naruto-sama, the wife of Hiyashi said with a bright smile on her face. Kushina breathed a sigh of relief and accepted the words. Thank you, both of you. I hope I'll never have to ask for something so heavy from either of you again, she replied back. Hiyashi shook his head, leaning his body up. No, what Naruto has given the Hyuga clan can almost never be repaid. You are our family just as we are yours now. I'm ashamed to say that we've forgotten that as well. How could we not help you, especially my greatest friend? He asked. Kushina chuckled before she glanced off to the side and blushed. Yeah, my son seems to be helping so many people these days. And, I'd be honored if the rest of our family would come to our wedding, she said, which made Hanako widen her eyes. You and Naruto-sama? She asked. It's already embarrassing if you repeat it back to me, Databane. Kushina responded before she saw the brightest smiles on the faces of the mother and father of Hanabi and Hinata. We'd be honored to attend. However, please do not take it a fault if some in the clan do not share the same sentiment. Indeed, Naruto-san and I discussed the idea, and I'll admit that I might have had a hand in stoking the flames of your relationship, but such practice as the Hyuga isn't meant for such close-knit relationships like yours. Many might not be so understanding, he confessed truthfully, but Kushina shrugged her shoulders. Come what may, in my heart I'm already my son's wife. I defer to him now. The best thing I can do is make sure we never question ourselves nor the path we've chosen. For Naruto, I was the holder of the Kyuubi no Yoko. Our elder, Mito-sama, once told me that there was a lot of hate embedded deep in the fox. At the time, I was terrified of becoming the one to hold it. And you know what she told me? Neither Hiyashi nor Hanako spoke before they saw Kushina touch her chest. She told me that only love could overcome the immense hate that rested in the body of the Kyuubi. I can remember 3 different times where I felt so much love that I felt like I could have overcome anything hate might have thrown at me. 1. When Minato and I were married. 2. When Naruto was born. 3. When he confessed just how much he loved you, Hanako finished while Kushina nodded. And I'll feel happiness the 4th time in my life when he becomes the man that I will spend the rest of my life with. Never will I take anyone else. For me, that is worth anyone's personal feelings about us, she said before she dismissed herself. Hanako waved her goodbye, but Kushina suddenly stopped when she opened the door. Her lips curved upwards before she marched over to Hanako. Hiyashi, be a good man and go do something else for about an hour or so. We're about to have some wife talk. Kushina said with a wide smile on her face. Kushina-san. Hanako exclaimed while Hiyashi looked between his wife and his friend's fiancé. He closed his eyes and sighed. Hiyashi stood up. Try not to take too long, he said before he left while Kushina sat with Hanako. Kushina-san, is this really necessary? The female Hyuga asked while Kushina nodded vigorously. Yup, once my mission is finished, I need your help. You see, our precious Makoto-chan. Hanako's eyes slowly got bigger and bigger as she saw the prankster-like grin on her friend's face. Really? She asked. Kushina nodded. I'm in. Hanako said as her lips curved up into a wide Cheshire-like grin. For a clan of those not known to smile much, even Kushina felt rather unnerved by her appearance, but it was worth it. That's my girl Databane. X. A few hours passed and the 4 members of Hinoken were called to the Hokage mansion. Tsunade quickly took the 4 of them to an undisclosed location. Kakashi, Yugao, Sasuke, and Makoto sat around a table with the Hokage. She'd just gotten through a meticulous process of making sure they weren't followed. Some of that involved lying to her forces, but there was no way around it. That was better than the alternative. We're heading to Stone Country. Why would we do that? Naruto claimed that the cult of Jushinists was in. Yes, I know. I also understand that I'll be asking for a lot from you guys in this mission, which is why you'll be paid for this S-rank assignment. I wish I could say there's no repercussions for failure, but if you fail then this could virtually lead to the death of our village. I'm counting on all of you. Tsunade said as Yugao, Sasuke, and Makoto turned to Kakashi. As the one appointed to the leader role by Kushina, they deferred to him. Kakashi took notice of their gaze before he exhaled a breath calmly. What's the plan, Tsunade-sama? He asked, his tone notably more serious than usually known for him. The Godime looked at the four of them and exhaled. I'm glad I listened to you, Yugao. I highly doubt we would have made much headway as we did with Naruto. However, the brat and Kushina are indeed too slow. As Shikaku stated, it'd be too long in a war of attrition against them. With that being the case, I'm not going to risk them knowing where you four are going and alerting their group. I have reports that Yura and a few forces with her are in Stone Country. They're looking for Danzo, she said. That made the four of Hinoken surprised for a moment. Tsunade continued on. I want you four to head there and find out what she's up to. Even though Yura's not a member of the village anymore, she's still hunting a Konoha interest target. If you can find her or any member of her team then make brief contact. If you're being followed, then I hope that'll drop their guard. Stay there 1 or 2 days, but after that make a quick turnaround and head to Otogakure to infiltrate the village. You leave tonight, she said. Kakashi leaned forward. And what should we do with the information we receive about Danzo? He asked. Tsunade massaged the bridge of her nose. Find a way to send it back to me. I'll probably assemble another team to follow up on it. Your jobs are to bring down this cult any way you can without exposing yourself. If things get really tough, then don't overextend yourself. Also, find out what this great slaughter is, she said. The four nodded before Makoto held up a piece of paper that she had hidden away. This is a scroll of the underground building mapped out by Naruto's spirits and drawn by Kushina. We can use this to find the structural weak points and exploit them, she said, passing it to Kakashi. He looked the map over and hummed. Then before we leave, we'll ask Naruto to map out the village as well. If they have a regular rotation of guard that we can get past, then we'll also be able to make use of it, he said. The rest agreed while Tsunade smirked. The brat's full of surprises. Alright, I wish you all the best of luck. Be the blades that Konoha wields and cut the throat of our enemies, she said as she slammed her hand on the table. Hi. The four stood up and, after a meticulous process, exited the Hokage mansion. We move out soon. I'll be studying this map in the meantime, Kakashi said to all of them. Yugao, Sasuke, and Makoto firmly agreed. Then, I'll head to the Dobi's house and ask him if he can get his spirits to map out the village for us while we run toward Stone Country, Sasuke said. Yugao then responded. It's probably best if we don't leave out the main gate of the village. It'd draw too much attention. If we want them to be off guard, then we should leave as stealthily as possible. Then we'll just have to leave off the side of the walls. No one should stop us and we'll leave under the cover of night, Makoto said and the others agreed. Sasuke then ran off and the matriarch of the Uchiha clan watched him go for an extended period of time. It got to the point that Yugao touched her shoulder. Are you alright, Makoto-san? Yugao asked. The black-haired woman broke out of her gaze and slowly nodded. Yes. Thank you, she said before she walked away. Yugao and Kakashi looked at each other in confusion before they decided to get their own work done. Thankfully, it didn't take Sasuke too long to get to the Uzumaki clan compound. Naturally, he made sure he wasn't seen until he came right up to the door. The sun was beginning to go down and it wouldn't be long until the team left. He knocked on the door and after a few minutes, it was open. Ah, greetings, Sasuke-san, Komachi said, having answered the door. Where is Naruto? I need to see him, he said and Komachi fully opened the door. Follow me, she said as she led him inside. When Sasuke followed her in, he noticed Gurren lazily waving at him as she watched TV in the large room. Yukimaru was seated in the middle of the room, scratching his head as he read through a book with tens of papers of failed seals. When he looked up, he silently waved to the Uchiha heir and Sasuke acknowledged him with a nod. Komachi led him outside and took towards the room which housed all of the Uzumaki clan's sacred sealing materials. Please wait here, she pleaded before she weaved through a myriad of hand signs. Sasuke watched the seals on the door unlock and the doors behind it open. She walked inside. Not even a minute later and out came her with Naruto in tow. However, He noticed the way his teammate looked. He was currently merged with one of his summons. Sasuke didn't know who, but he could tell from the silver hair covering the head of his friend. That wasn't all. The former blonde's eyes radiated with great power, the power of the summoner of a god. Out came Shizune and Ebisu. Sasuke noticed the latter two looked utterly haggard, each of them holding large slabs over their heads. Their hair was unkempt and bodies were riddled with sweat. They looked like they hadn't slept in days, yet neither spoke a word of complaint. "Can't say I'm happy to see you, Tem, but I take it this isn't a social call," the blonde said while Sasuke snorted. "Of course it's not, Dobi." Sasuke then turned to Komachi. "Thank you," he said. Komachi nodded and bid her cousin a goodbye. He then turned back to Shizune and Ebisu. "What's going on with them?" he asked. Naruto glanced back at the two and shook his head. "They're being punished. That's all you need to know. Anyway, what's up?" he asked as Sasuke glanced off to the side for a moment. "You have a quiet place?" Sasuke asked. Naruto's powerful eyes narrowed before he led Sasuke away. The summoner of the Shinigami dismissed Shizune and Ebisu. Both wordlessly walked back inside as the two young men of Hinoken found a very vacant hallway. Sasuke leaned against the wall while Naruto stood next to him. "We got our mission from the Hokage a few minutes ago," he said. Naruto didn't seem surprised. "Yeah, it makes sense that Ba-chan would send you guys out today. To be honest, I thought she might wait till tomorrow, but I guess we don't have much time," he replied. Sasuke snorted. "Yeah, we're heading to Stone Country to try and find Yura. We're told she's assembled a team to find Danzo. We're gonna do this so that, if we're followed, we won't make any of the Jashinists suspicious. We can only hope they get bored of us and then we can begin our real objective. Naruto, could you send someone out to inform Yura that we'll be heading her way? Also, could you have someone map out the village of Otogakure? It would make our mission easier," he explained. Naruto folded his arms and hummed. "You'll be out of the village. Even if I could make a map of the place, I couldn't properly get it to you," he said before the Hinoken Uchiha shook his head. He quickly summoned a small snake in palm. "Give it to Yunora, she'll give it to me. Until then, she'll stay with you," he said. The tiny snake bowed to Sasuke and forked her tongue at Naruto. She then slithered into his pocket. "I'll do what I can for you guys then. Also, if you guys ever need help, call for me and Ka-chan. We'll be there to help you," the summoner of the Shinigami urged. Sasuke chuckled. "Like I'd ever call your ass for help, loser," he responded back stubbornly, yet smiling. Naruto sucked his teeth. "I'd save the other three first before I ever saved you, Tem," Naruto said before he walked away. The smile on Sasuke's face fell for a moment. He hoped it wouldn't get to that point. Sasuke left the Uzumaki compound and came back to the Uchiha compound. There he stayed with his mother and his lover until the moon flew high into the sky. He quickly kissed Yuna and she wished him the best. He also gave Sakura a goodbye when she returned to them. Soon, he joined Kakashi, Yugao, and Makoto on top of a roof. The air was filled with a pleasant breeze as they pulled up their masks over their mouths. "We'll run through the night. We're on a short time frame. I hope we'll be in Kusa by evening. We should then be in Stone Country by the evening after that. Sasuke and I will take the first watch," he said while Makoto and Yugao agreed. The four then grabbed their blades and dashed on top of the village wall. The moon became their light as they ran off from the village and towards Kusagakure. Their agile footsteps landed them on tree trunks. Their legs blasted them forward as a brush of cold air blew against their faces. Yugao pulled up her mask. If any civilian was even lucky enough to give a glimpse, then they would just seen four shadows moving swiftly through the trees. Hell, they probably couldn't even be counted as shadows. Perhaps several blurs was more appropriate. However, what no one living knew was that they had a right to be cautious. 5 or 6 shadows, a few miles behind them, moved just as quickly. That said, not even those shadows knew that they were being followed as well. Kushina slowly opened her eyes. Naruto stood with her in their bedroom. They're definitely being followed. Asuma and Deidara have found 6 Jashinists tailing them. What should we do? She asked while Naruto reached into his hand and pulled out Yunora. She flicked her forked tongue at him while he started to write on a piece of paper. I'll have to use Yunora to alert them. I wish we could have spotted them before they left the village. I could have used my new jutsu to finish them off. Still, I hate how short range it is, he said as he handed the scroll to her. Yunora bowed and quickly dispelled while Kushina stood to her feet. Have you sent out someone to alert Yura? She asked. Yeah, they should be getting to her location right now. Besides, this'll give me a chance to learn what she discovered about Danzo, he said before he slowly fell into silence. Kushina noticed the look on her son's face. Even without him telling her, she had a good idea of his thoughts. They were being pushed too far and in too many corners. If something urgent about Danzo did come up, what could they do if they couldn't leave the village that was full of Jushinists? She patted his shoulder. Trust in them. They'll be fine, she said. Naruto's lips curved upwards and he surprised his mother with a kiss. She happily took it and sighed blissfully. I love you, Yano, Naruto said as he hugged her. I know, but it's nice to hear you say it. The mother and son lovers stayed like this for a little while before the Kyuubi snarled. Enough of your sickening bonding, brat. Hurry up and get in here. You've got more training to do. Kyuubi bellowed as Naruto silently groaned. He then reluctantly pulled himself away from his mother. When she looked at him curiously, she saw the irritation on his face. The furball says I need to finish my training. I don't think I'll be getting much sleep tonight, he said, and Kushina agreed. While she was still apprehensive of the nine-tailed fox, clearly there had been some type of new relationship established between it and her son. So long as it remained amiable, then she'd trust her son's judgment. Alright, I'll do some light training myself. However, don't work yourself too hard, she advised before she left him alone. Naruto wasn't too ashamed to say he enjoyed the sway of her ass as she left. Once she was gone, Naruto sat on the ground and exhaled slowly. He then found himself in the depths of his mindscape. He saw Pakura. As she was the one he was currently bound to, she appeared there with him. When he took a good look at her, it seemed that the Kyuubi was right. His summons could grow more powerful from having a strong, stable connection with him. There was great power radiating from her, even more than before. Strange markings like those of the Shinigami summoning contract started coming over her skin. Her hair was notably longer as well. Had Naruto not had his mother, Yura, and Yuri, he would definitely have fancied Pakura. Even then, she was definitely a beautiful woman. He watched her curve up her lips, but she didn't say anything. Hurry up and finish your training, brat. So far we've been rather lucky that nothing's possessed you. Link up with the woman and you will continue training with the three of us. The Kyuubi said as Morio and the kindred stood around them. Meanwhile, Naruto sighed. Haven't I trained enough today? Just because I can't die, doesn't mean I want to. He said before the Kyuubi bellowed. Quit your complaining. I've got a feeling that something bad's gonna happen, something extremely bad. You better be prepared for it, brat, Kyuubi said. Naruto's eyes narrowed. He never thought he'd imagine it from the furball of all people, but the Kyuubi almost, sounded scared. Of course, the blonde would never say that out loud, but that's what it seemed like. Alright, what am I supposed to do? Naruto asked. While I've been alive, I've seen some of the worst and best, no matter how small the latter is, that humanity has to offer. We're gonna get started on learning this technique that the Shinigami wanted you to start comprehending. Paradise and torment, heaven and hell. Comprehend these two while you fight us, he said. Naruto and even Pakura stood confused. And how is he supposed to do that? Those terms could mean anything, Pakura said before the Kyuubi glared at her. No, they do not. It is mortals that make their meanings anything. They have always been the same and meant what you think they mean. Now, you'd better get started because we're not going to hold back on you, brat, while your physical body rests. Don't expect a good night's sleep anytime soon, he said while Naruto grumbled. Nevertheless, Pakura stood at his side while the kindred readied themselves. Morio did as well, and Kyuubi stood amongst them as the largest and most imposing individual. Pakura fused her soul with Naruto's and the blonde charged at his three summons, the ancient, profound, and divine techniques of the Shinigami ready to be tested and learned. Are you sure we have to leave today? Yuri asked while Konohamaru and Moegi looked at her strangely. But if we don't leave, then it'll be hard for us to get to Iowa. Shouldn't we use the time to look around the village and see what we can take advantage of? What's wrong, Yuri-san, you seem worried, the orange-haired girl said with a curious look on her face. Yuri bit her lip as she tapped her finger on her arm. Well, She couldn't fault her new teammates. They didn't realize the gravity of the situation like she did. Still, she'd done her best to make sure that she didn't give anything away. However, she must not have been doing a good job because Moegi and Konohamaru kept asking if she was alright. Even Isobu was telling her to calm down. It's not surprising why she doesn't want to go. She's Naruto Ni's girl. Of course she doesn't want to be away from him. Konohamaru said proudly. Well, he wasn't exactly wrong on either of those statements. Yuri sure as hell didn't want to be away from her cousin while Jashinists were in the village. She wouldn't mind cracking some of their heads as well for what Hidan did to Asuma and Ino's team. Yuri had actually been seeing the blonde for some time. In fact, she'd been hanging out with all the ladies of Naruto's former school recently. They were nice, a tad vain sometimes, but they had good hearts. Speaking of that, are you gonna marry Naruto-san, Yuri-san? I hope you'll invite me, Moegi said while Yuri grinned. You're damn right I am, Datbayan. Still the fun part comes after the wedding, she said while Moegi blinked. There's more fun, the young genin asked as Yuri grinned. Yup, a lot of fun. But you'll learn about that when you're a little older, she said sneakily while Konohamaru and Moegi glanced at each other. You're only 3 years older than us, Moegi fired back before Yuri grinned. A year changes a lot of things, Moegi, Yuri said a little smugly before she felt the presence of someone above her. Well, in my eyes you're all a bunch of brats no matter how many years change, especially to a girl who somehow managed to burn down a shop's freezer. Yuri grimaced as she looked up and saw Shiranui Genma looking down upon them. Apparently, one of their sensei got sick and he had to take over for them. I fixed it and we got the mission done. Besides, who the hell keeps their food in the freezer while you need to have it cleaned? The female Uzumaki asked while Genma flicked a Senbon between his teeth. So, this is what Uzumaki Naruto would be if he was a girl. The idea is oddly hilarious and terrifying at the same time, Genma thought to himself before he jumped down. Once he stood in front of his team, he smirked. Naruto's spent many years without you, Yuri. He can stand to be apart from you for about a month or two. Also, I hope you three have gotten enough rest. We'll be heading to Iwagakure soon. I want you all to be on your best behavior. The war between Konoha and Iwa has left many upset on both sides. I've got no doubts somebody in Iwa's gonna piss you off, but remember that you don't just represent yourselves, you represent Konoha, the Hokage, and represent Fire Country. Show not just me, but all of Konoha and the shinobi world at large that you're worthy of becoming Chunin, he said sternly. Konohamaru and Moegi gulped but Yuri didn't seem particularly interested. Well, maybe that was the wrong way to put it. She knew what her cousin's father had done to the nation of Iwa. Though she didn't like reading, unless it was one of her Bishonen novels, she was well aware of the history between Minato and Iwa. And if we get attacked? Yuri asked. Genma, Konohamaru, and Moegi looked at her. The latter two quickly turned back to their Jonin sensei. He sighed and rubbed the back of his head. Then do what you think is right. I'll take responsibility for it, but you aren't allowed to engage first. Now, if you're done with your questions, I'd like us to leave now. Do you three have everything prepared? He asked. No, Yuri didn't have everything. Ni-chan, please get married already. I could have used a good luck fuck at least. Yuri whined before she shook her head, obviously dejected. Genma raised an eyebrow at her fallen demeanor, but he thought nothing of it. Instead, he nodded and proceeded to lead the three out of the village. Are your human mating rituals really that exciting? Isobu asked. Truth be told, he didn't really get it. He always fell asleep whenever Yuri and Naruto were intimate. If you had a human form, you'd understand my suffering, Yuri exclaimed while Isobu shook his head. However, he quickly narrowed his eyes when he felt a pair of malicious eyes on his young partner. Oi, girl, you just suddenly found a reason to go back home. You're being followed by someone incredibly dangerous. Definitely not someone you can contend with, he said. Yuri stiffened. What do you mean? She asked. You know you're Hokage, the leader of your village. He asked. Yuri nodded. She's worlds beneath this stalker of yours. Chapter 67. Quote, you will face many defeats in life, but never let yourself be defeated. By Maya Angelou. Yuri felt like her entire world had been flipped upside down. Someone even stronger than the Hokage was watching her. Her eyes darted left and right, but Isobu quickly grabbed her attention. Don't make it too obvious. Besides, there's nothing you can do. This ain't like the Akatsuki that you managed to stall. If you don't do this right, then you could be damning the whole village. He warned, which made Yuri gulp. Gee, thanks for the vote of confidence, she said before she stopped walking. Genma and the rest of her team looked back at her. Yuri quickly chuckled, obviously embarrassed. Turns out I have something back at home that I forgot. You all go without me. I'll meet you at the gates, she said before she ran off before anyone else could stop her. Is it something important that she forgot? Moegi asked, which made Konohamaru smirk. I bet she wants a kiss from the boss. Naruto needs obviously every redhead's dream man, he said while Moegi offered something between a chuckle and a snort. Though she definitely wouldn't say he wasn't a handsome older man. As for Genma, he just sighed. The Jonin just urged the other two genin to follow him as they waited for Yuri. Meanwhile, Yuri ran as she could back home. Of course, she tried not to make it so obvious as Isobu instructed, but she couldn't help feeling the bead of sweat falling down her neck. Even now, she couldn't understand who was following her. She didn't feel anything, but obviously Isobu did. He told her that the look still hadn't gone away and she felt anxious. Did the Jashinists know that Naruto told her about them? Had she done something to give herself away? Yuri landed in front of her home and she opened the door slowly. Yuri, aren't you supposed to be headed to Iowa? Gurren asked while Yuri laughed. I think I forgot something. I'll be right back, she exclaimed as she ran up the stairs. Gurren blinked while Komachi looked up the stairs from the side of the kitchen. The two Uzumaki looked at each other before Yuri disappeared down the upper hall. Naturally, instead of heading for her room, the young woman ran to Naruto and Kushina's bedroom. She noticed the light was out, but she couldn't afford to be respectful this once. She banged on the door. Ni-chan, I know you're sleeping, but I need you right now, Yuri said urgently. After a moment, the door opened. Yuri, I swear on any other time I'd love to, but I can't right now. I promise that once I'm married to Ka-chan, I'll try and give you as much attention as you need, but right now. Not that, damn it. Though, I'm gonna hold you to that. This isn't about that, she said as she stepped into the room. Naruto yawned and flicked on the light. He'd still been training, more like getting his ass kicked, with the Kindred, Morio, and the Kyuubi. Even with Pakura helping him out, he was forced to admit just how powerful all four spirits were when they ganging up on him together. They each earned their reputations. It's not that. Then what is it? He asked tiredly. Yuri bit her lip and sighed. Ni-chan, someone was stalking me. If Naruto wasn't awake before, he definitely was now. What? He asked while Yuri sat on the bed. She even asked Isobu if the stalker was still observing them, but he confirmed that they weren't. She inhaled and exhaled. Yeah, Sanbi felt it and warned me. Apparently this person's such a threat that not even Tsunade's a threat to them. Ni-chan, do you think the Jashinists could be that powerful? She asked. Naruto wasn't sure how to properly process the words that he was hearing. Someone even more powerful than Tsunade was watching Yuri. Oi, Naruto, she's speaking the truth. Isobu just spoke to me. In fact, he likened it as comparing an ocean to a pond. In some ways the same, but one vastly superior to the other, the Kyuubi said as Naruto narrowed his eyes. He sat on the bed and chuckled. This was like some kind of bad joke. Where were all of these people coming from? Yuri, give me your hand, he said. She nodded and held his hand. The two closed their eyes and immediately they were in a shared space with the Kyuubi, Sanbi, and everyone else. Kyuubi and Sanbi glanced at each other before the two grunted, seemingly at odds. Naruto and Yuri groaned before the former called for attention. Alright, what the hell is going on here? Now someone even more powerful than Ba-chan is in the village. He asked. Sanbi quickly snorted. Calm down, brat. I never told Yuri they were in Konoha. I just said that there were eyes on her. There are numerous methods of achieving this, Sanbi said while Yuri gawked. Then why don't you tell me that? You had me freaking out as I ran home. She replied angrily. Because for all I know, it is this group that you're combating with, and yet this gaze feels oddly familiar. However, we're probably in good graces. Whoever this is, it's clear that they aren't prepared to attack. If they did, I'm confident you could contend with them, but not without severe repercussions to your village and the elemental nations. If you're prepared for such an outcome, then we can focus efforts on them as well. Personally, I don't think you're ready. Far from it, in fact, he replied as Naruto and Yuri glanced at each other. Wisely, Pakura, Morio, and the kindred remained silent, listening to the conversation. Naruto felt both offended and shaken by that declaration. And why is that? I'm plenty strong, he exclaimed. I merely gave you my advice. Besides, how can you conquer your greatest enemies if you can't even conquer yourself? Face it, boy. If you battle, then you are the biggest hindrance. Say you defeat the person after tearing the world asunder, tired and exhausted, you'll be easily taken over by any spirit that would have you. Perhaps you'll become even worse than the person you were fighting. You're the summoner of a god, and the realm of death. Act like it, the Sanbi said while Naruto narrowed his eyes. Naruto spoke no further before Yuri cleared her throat. So what should I do then? Am I just going to be stalked by some powerful being all the days of my life? She asked. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki bit his lip and shook his head. One problem after the other, all of it seemed to be going to shit around him. Time and time again. Could it be Akatsuki? We haven't heard anything from them in a while, Pakura asked, making her voice known through everyone. Oh right, those are the S-rank hunting us. Their activities have mostly been silent since Ni-chan fought that pain guy, right? Well, is hunting us even required anymore? Whatever they were planning to do won't work anymore because the Kyuubi's not composed of chakra anymore. Look at him. He's a walking winter coat. Yuri pointed out, staring at the Kyuubi's annoyed, furry white face. His white as pure snow tail swished through the air. Call me that one more time and I'll decorate my teeth with something red, girl. He responded while Yuri laughed cheekily. However, the Sanbi shook his head. No, it was someone beyond even them. I got a good gauge of their power when Yuri fought with that woman of paper. I also managed to see your battle with the leader, the man with the Rinnegan of our father, the Rakudo Sennin. It is someone even greater than they. It seems they got what they wanted and have left. It happened before we reached home. Naruto and Yuri looked at each other. So what do we do then? The latter asked. Naruto sighed and scratched his head. We'll just have to do the best with what we have. We don't know who this person is that stalked Yuri, we don't know where they are, or even what they're capable of aside from what you've told us. I'll send a word out to Itachi to monitor your team. I'll also send word to Zabuza and Haku. I can bet it wouldn't be bad if the daimyo of Whirlpool came for a visit. Besides knowing him, he'll look for an excuse to get out of his duties for a while, he said while Yuri nodded. Alright, then. I think it'll be good if I tell Genma-sensei, but I hope he doesn't tell the others. It won't be good if we're too panicked to perform during the Chunin exams. I'm a little sad you might not be there to watch me, but I expect some type of reward if I do well, Datbayan. She replied while Naruto laughed. You have my word, he promised with a big smile on his face. Yuri then quickly kissed him, much to the annoyance of most around them. She then pulled back. I'll hold you to that. Alright, I'm off, she said before she and the Sanbi left the mindscape together. Naruto was about to leave as well, but the Kyuubi quickly stopped him. You're not done, brat. Contact the Uchiha once you're finished with your training. We must make use of every opportunity. Get back to work, the Kyuubi explained while Naruto rolled his eyes. Pakura chuckled before she quickly merged her spirit with Naruto's again. Meanwhile, Yuri opened her eyes and rolled her shoulders. She spotted her unconscious cousin and kissed his cheek. She then got up and patted down her shorts. She opened the door and noticed Kushina. Aren't you supposed to be gone? And what are you doing in here? The older redhead asked while the younger one flicked her tongue at her. Leaving now. And, I was getting some last-minute good luck. You guys better be married by the time I get back. She shouted as she ran down the stairs. Yuri bid her family one more goodbye and charged out the door. Well, at least she'd see Itachi at some point. He could be a little moody sometimes, but she couldn't remember one Uchiha who wasn't. Yes, not even Makoto. After some time, Yuri finally made it to the front gates and the rest of her team. They noticed her and she smiled warmly. Got your business out of the way? Genma asked. If I said no, would you hit me? She asked. Probably. Then yes, I do. Genma smiled and so did Yuri. Soon, Team Genma walked out of the gates of Konoha. Thus, They began their long journey towards Iwagakure. So what should we do to pass the time? Moegi asked. Yuri's mouth thinned. If someone fucking called for I Spy, then she was going to purposely fail the exams out of pure spite. In fact, perhaps she should have brought more reading material. Kagura narrowed her eyes as she closed the window she'd been using to view Uzumaki Yuri. The regent stood next to her, not speaking unless spoken to. With the weeks that had gone by, the man in the mask thought he had a pretty good handle on keeping the powerful Otsutsuki pleased. Yes, I sense the presence of my sister's great power in this young girl. It has clearly been diluted over the years, but it is indeed there. Definitely more than the bodies that you have given me so far. Though tell me, how was she able to sense my presence? That shouldn't be possible, Kagura said, tossing another body off to the side, having effectively drained it of chakra. The regent smiled. Yes, Kagura-sama. Though I am sure it is beneath your divine notice, she is an Uzumaki. She is a descendant of Kagaya's first son, Hagoromo. Unfortunately, there are a myriad of reasons as to why she was able to sense your great presence. It could be that your truth power hasn't fully manifested and you're still in the realm where mortals can properly perceive you. It could be that because she's spent so much time with the god of death's summoner that she's gained some otherworldly powers of her own. It could also be that Biju that has been sealed inside her. However, I'm most inclined to believe in the second or third, he answered while Kagura lifted one leg over the other. I see. I indeed sensed a strange power within her and it only grew stronger when she went into those peasant establishments. So that must be the housing grounds of this, Uzumaki clan. As expected of my sister's line. It is a bunch of waste through and through. Nevertheless, there is much to gain from someone like her. So these exams will be taking place soon? She asked. The man quickly nodded. Yes, Kagura-sama. In fact, it is not in Iwa that we shall recover your power. Please trust in me that your time will come and you shall receive more than what the people of this world could give you, the regent said with a grin of complete confidence on his face. Kagura looked at him with a raised eyebrow. Constantly, she found herself perplexed by this man next to her. Though he was a mortal like the rest of them, he knew his place when addressing her. He also spoke in a way that gave her the conviction to rely on him. Had his words proven true, she would already honor him with not only his child, but also with the option to become an Otsutsuki just like her. None of her clan would question her either. She would make him powerful. Naturally, he wouldn't be on par with her, but he would be a fitting man to take her place as consort once they subjugated this land that her sister betrayed her clan for. And what makes you speak with such confidence? She asked. The ceaseless quarrels of men, Kagura-sama. Such a play of acts continues to make for the best and most predictable entertainment. Kagura wasn't sure what to say to that, but she allowed him his eccentrics before her soul dematerialized back into the sword. Well, you are free to leave my presence for now. I shall call for you should I require more. Continue with your plans, she said before she fell silent. The regent bowed his head and left Kagura in the throne room of the underground base that they'd established for her. Once he came out, he noticed Nagato and Obito waiting for him. Ah, my comrades. What have you come to greet me for today? He asked while Obito narrowed his eyes. You continue to pander to that woman and yet you continue to ally yourself with our organization. You have yet to go out on one assignment since you've been inducted. We have captured 5 out of 9 Jinchuriki. All of this done without you. You're going to search for the Rokubi. Your services to that woman will be put on hold for now. I won't allow you to refuse, Obito replied with a deep frown on his face. The regent proceeded to laugh for a moment before he cleared his throat. Just as man lives to serve, so too does he live to try and stand in the realm of the gods. Uchiha Obito, Akatsuki has long transcended the requirement of the Biju. In fact, they are but an afterthought in the grand scheme of things. They are just another worthless resource. However, to Satyu, I shall undertake the assignment, he said with an extravagant bow. Nagato stepped forward with the diva path. Then you will set out with me. Kisame and Zetsu are currently hunting the Hachibi. Clearly, the Sanbi and Kyubi are more complicated than we thought. Once we've acquired the last 2, then we'll focus our full efforts on the last 2, he replied. No, clearly, they've avoided attacking us. Then we will force them to combat us. Having 7 out of 9 wasn't a part of the plan, but we will have to adapt. I shall take care of the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, Nagato said as the two looked at him. The regent smirked. Ah yes, you and Naruto-sama fought back when I was implementing the early stages of my movement. Perhaps your defeat has left you with more questions than the answers you'd hoped for. Feel free to pursue them as much as you wish, for that is the essence of humanity, to question everything and assume nothing, the regent said before Obito shook his head. No, you and I shall meet with Uzumaki Naruto. I too have something to discuss with him, perhaps something even more personal than you, Obito said, rubbing his arm that he'd used to transplant with that of a deceased Kumogakure shinobi. Then I imagine that you will continue to observe the Sanbi Jinchuriki then. I understand you actually captured her once, the regent responded next. Obito glared at the man. Even with the mask covering his face, Obito knew the bastard in front of him was smiling. Just be ready to leave when it's most convenient for you, he said as he turned around and removed himself from the trio. Nagato looked at the regent, he then left without another word. Meanwhile, the regent grabbed his mask and took it off. He wiped his forehead and sighed. None of them can see, Naruto-sama. None of them can see the grand destiny, the exquisite play, the bright future connecting all of us together. Whether they like it or not, we all have our part to play, and so do you. It is only up to you to decide if you're a major chess piece or a pawn. The regent moved into the darkness of the tunnels, strangely dancing to the opera music he heard within the recesses of his mind. Next morning came almost too fast for Naruto. He didn't know when he'd been allowed to properly rest, but Chiriku was already calling to him for more lessons. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki rolled out of bed and spent at least a half hour of self-reflection and meditation. Once that was done, he found himself trying to eat some breakfast. While he ate, he thought about Yuri's situation. He hadn't had the chance to tell his mother about it, but what the hell could he even say to that? I guess I'll just have to trust Ka-chan. Besides, I sure as hell can't come up with something on my own, he thought before he continued to eat. However, the longer he continued to think, the greater a realization he made. Wait, Itachi wasn't the only one he could send out. He actually had two very willing individuals that could go and help Yuri. It could continue to go into their atonement. A sharp grin on his face, Naruto got up from his seat and walked into the Uzumaki grounds where the clan's sacred sealing jutsu were located. He unlocked each seal and pushed open the door. So far at least 3 or 4 days had passed. Perhaps a brief break for them both was needed. Naruto opened the door and turned on the lights. When he stepped inside, he saw his two captives in the midst of their punishment. Ebisu and Shizune were caked in sweat. Their arms were notably much lower than when they started out. The former's glasses had quickly fallen off his face and the veins in his forehead bulged in agony. The latter was no better. Despite how strong she tried, she'd been dropped to one knee, the weight threatening to crush her. Naruto wasn't even sure how long she'd be able to hold it up. Her load was much heavier than Ebisu's after all. So much sweat was on her that she couldn't even open her eyes. Her hair was even more messed up than the closet perverts. Oh come on. Even Yuri-chan could do this exercise, and here you two Jonin are struggling like this. Is it too hard? Well, I suppose if you beg me, then I can lessen it for you, he said with a smirk on his face. However, that smirk quickly fell when he saw the resolute glares on their faces. Don't kid yourself, brat. Why, you should make it heavier. This is too easy. Ebisu replied back while Shizune scowled, raising up the harsh weights while she got off her knee. And Naruto-kun, I might never be able to forgive myself for failing Tsunade-sama in my village, but this weight, this pain, I think I understand. I understand what I must do. I will rebuild my self-worth, and I will swear upon the sweat on my forehead that no one else will break my spirit like before. Make it harder if you want, I'll keep it up for as long as I need to, and I will teach the next generation to become better than me who failed. Shizune replied while Naruto grinned. The blonde slowly nodded before he walked over to them. Well, I'm glad your mentality's in the right place even if your punishment isn't over. I'll also think about taking you up on that challenge later, but for now, I've got something else for you to do, he said as he touched the weights. He then released their immense pressure on the two. Shizune dropped her arms and panted, as did Ebisu. Both fell to the ground, their obvious bravado and exhaustion on full display. Naruto handed Ebisu his glasses and helped Shizune to her feet. You both stink, he said as their faces flushed with embarrassment. I wish I could give you both a break, but I have a mission for you. Wash yourselves up and get some food. You're going to be working with Uchiha Itachi. Just like the both of you, he's under my realm as well. So whatever grudges you think you've got with him, then put them to the side. You'll be heading into Iwagakure to survey Yuri's team as she takes the Chunin exams. She's getting stalked by someone powerful and I need anyone I can spare to make sure nothing happens, he said. Ebisu and Shizune glanced at each other. Is it the Akatsuki? The former assistant to the Godime asked. If I told you someone even more powerful than that, would you believe me? He asked. The two trembled. Naruto was notoriously a bad liar when it came to his friends. However, the sheer impossibility of his question only made them believe him further. I hope you're not overestimating us. What could we do against someone more powerful than the Akatsuki? Ebisu asked before Shizune shook her head. We do what we can. That's all. I won't make Yuri grieve for me a second time. Just as she fought for us, I'll fight for her. Where will we be meeting Itachi? She asked. Naruto handed her a scroll. You'll be going to Uzushiogakure to get him. I've already informed him that you're coming. Zabuza and Haku will also join you guys along with an entourage of Uzushio's nobles. It's normal for daimyo to attend such events and I can bet that some nobles would want to meet with Haku. Ka-chan's been teaching me a lot of the whole political nonsense. Still makes my head hurt. At this point, I'd rather have people I know around Yuri-chan than not, he reasoned. Ebisu hummed. Take makes sense. When do we leave? He asked, hoping to see his team again even if it was under unfortunate circumstances. By the end of the day. Don't worry. No one's gonna stop either of you. You're not a part of Konoha's military anymore. You're considered my summons and on business from me. Take what you need, he said. They both nodded. Ebisu walked out first, which left Naruto and Shizune alone. Soon, the latter rushed the former. She threw her arms around him and pulled him into a tight hug. Confused, Naruto touched her arm. Thank you, Naruto. Thank you for not giving up on us, she said as she kissed his cheek. The blonde blushed before Shizune left him alone. He watched her go. There might still be a lot of grief within her soul, but her body seemed notably much lighter than before.